everyone.
Hey, what's up?
I'm Patty.
I'm Lexi.
Welcome to Theory Mess.
Today, we will be talking about two cases that we find pretty interesting. One is Joseph Fritzl and Elizabeth Fritzl.
Yes, and the other one is going to be the death of JonBenét Ramsey, which is a very tragic case. Well, both of these are, but definitely going to dig into them a little bit. We're going to get started with the death of JonBenét. So, I'm pretty sure that most of you may have heard of her because it's a very well-known case. She was a pageant queen. She was 6 years old, and her body was found on December 26, 1996 in her home in Colorado. And it's still an open case to this day. So there was never anyone convicted for her death. It was obviously ruled as a homicide and everything, but it's still an ongoing investigation. And I think that's the reason why it's so popular. I don't know if that's the word, but so well known, just because this is one of those cases that really gets you
thinking.
Yes, and it upsets you and it gets you frustrated and you get mad and everything because it's such a horrific crime that you just want to find whoever was guilty of it, and it's you need to pay for what you did. But so let's get started on the case. So her mother on December 26, 1996 wakes up, and this is a very
established family.
Yes, they're wealthy. They're well known. She's a pageant queen. It's her family consists of her mom, her dad, her brother, who was 9 years old at the time of her murder, and JonBenét, who was 6. And so she wakes up the day after Christmas, and as she's going downstairs, I believe she said she woke up around 5 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And she sees pieces of paper, which turned out to be the ransom note on her stairs. And the weird thing, this is where it already begins to get weird, because the ransom note is 3 pages long, which is so unusual for a ransom note.
And it's very detailed.
Very specific. So, we'll get into that in a little bit. So she reads through the ransom note. She's being told that her daughter was kidnapped. They want money. And she calls 911, which the ransom note specifically obviously says, don't call the cops, don't contact anyone. If you let anyone know, we're going to kill your daughter. So she proceeds to call 911, and within minutes or however long they took, the cops arrived. Yeah, the police arrived. But another thing that she did that is kind of okay, well, why would she do that? Is that she calls her neighbor. So immediately her house is filled with people, right? There's a lot of people. There's a lot of neighbors. Then the police arrive.
A lot of people going in and out.
Yes. And if you're familiar at all with this case, you kind of get pissed off at the police right away, because it's there were so many errors that were made, just even beginning with the fact that there were so many people inside that house when the police arrived. It's they should have said, hey, you know what, everybody needs to get out, this is very serious, everybody needs to go, only the family needs to stay in. So they go ahead and do that, and that was one thing, right? So they're waiting for a phone call, whatever goes on. So one of the detectives or police officers that arrives there tells the dad, JonBenét, to start looking around the house and start looking for things that are missing.
Any clues to find
it.
If
there was forced entry, anything. And she told him to start from top to bottom because it was a 2-story house. He does the opposite. He starts from the bottom, so he goes into the basement and he finds the body of his daughter. So here's another thing that I think is okay, man, the police shouldn't have done that. It was the police who should have been looking for a forced entry, who should have been looking for, something. Because yeah, it's your house and you're probably going to notice if something is missing, but the police know more or they know what to look for in terms of a crime scene or like a robbery or something, like, it's just, I don't know. I think that they shouldn't have done that. But anyways, John gets to the basement. He sees his daughter. She has duct tape on her mouth. He proceeds to pick her up, remove the duct tape from her mouth, and carry her upstairs. So already with that, he already removed the body, touched the evidence. Oh, and I forgot to mention that when he picked her up, he got a blanket that was there and covered her. So that already is like, like, you could have gotten rid of DNA. Like, when the forensics team arrived, they could have said like, oh, well, she struggled or whatever, whatever.
Need to know yes. What happened, how her body was placed to judge, on exactly what happened.
Yes. So then they know that she's dead or whatnot. And then this is where the case begins and the police begin to look for suspects. Now, the thing is that, so this happened in Boulder, Colorado, and the Boulder police, they almost immediately think that it's the parents who killed JonBenét. And this is important because there's a lot of things that they do and a lot of things that are portrayed in the media to make it seem as though it was them.
Mm-hmm. So they wanted to put the pressure on the parents so that they can get a confession or at least one of them to crack, whether it be both or at least just one. That way they can start to act on proving it, for both parents and to convict them. But I know that they tried, that they said that like we have evidence. I saw the video of Patsy, her mom, saying no, that it wasn't me. They were they were pretty persistent that it wasn't them. And so after a while they started looking elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think that fingers were pointed towards the family to the point where, till this day, a lot of people who are familiar with this case might still believe that it was one of the family members.
The police just couldn't prove it.
Yes. So one of the things that they did about like trying to portray that it was a family was that I think that the biggest, the one that I was like the most shocked about was when the FBI and the Boulder Police Department released to the media and said that there were no footprints
in the snow.
Because
it was winter.
And there was snow in Colorado. But so that when the importance of the footprints is that, okay, well, if somebody broke into your home, killed your daughter,
walked through the snow.
Yes, and come out. So the people were like mind blown. They were like, okay, well, there are no footprints, so it must have been somebody in the house, because there's no way somebody flew into the house and flew out to kill her, right?
Also, on the ransom note, the only fingerprint that they could find was Patsy's when she grabbed it to read it.
Yes.
That's the only fingerprint that they found.
Mm-hmm. Which can be explained as like, if it was like an outside party, it's like, well, maybe they were wearing gloves. They were, they were aware of not trying to leave any DNA behind. So going back to the snow, when the media released this, everybody was like convinced that it was the parents. But if you look at crime scene photos of the house of that day, there was no snow. Well, there was snow, but there was patches of snow, like really small patches of snow, to the point where you wouldn't even have to touch the snow in order to get in and out of the house. Like the whole walkway to get into the house, it was clear. There was no snow there. And that's the thing that is kind of like, well, why would they why would they do it? But at the same time, I feel like that's where maybe the police department really failed, because they just went based off on instinct.
Yeah.
Like they were so focused on trying to get a confession out of the parents that they weren't looking at the whole picture. They weren't considering all possibilities. They weren't considering all suspects.
And I think with all the neighbors coming
Yes.
as well, that even if there was a patch of snow, you know,
Yes.
where a footprint would have been, as if the person, you know, if it was somebody outside that murdered her and left, all of the neighbors going over and walking through, you know what I mean? Maybe they covered it up. Maybe they, you know, walking over the person's footprints. They're not going to be able to find it. They're not going to be able to find as much DNA evidence as they would if nobody went into the house and they didn't have all those people in that house.
Yeah. So the cause of death on the autopsy was asphyxia by strangulation. So she was strangled.
But they also found that her skull was fractured.
Yes, they did. But I don't think they said whether that wasn't
like the cause of death.
Or
it was, no, the cause of death was
asphyxiation.
asphyxiation. So
Maybe she was hit on the head first and then terrible.
But they did find evidence. She wasn't raped, but they did find evidence of sexual abuse.
Assault. With a foreign object.
Yeah.
Most likely a paintbrush. So that was another thing that I know a lot of people question, like, okay, well, was she being abused? And on the autopsy report, it states that there was no evidence that she was being sexually assaulted throughout her lifetime, but that she was sexually assaulted that day night. Or that night, which was the night of her murder. And I think that is important, because if she would have been sexually assaulted, then it's like, okay, well, man.
It would have to be people that she was in contact with, you know, regularly.
And then that would even put more, like, eyes on the parents. It's like, okay, well, you know, specifically, I'm guessing the dad or the brother, you know. And then that's another thing that a lot of people thought it was, or think that it was her brother, again, who was 9 years old at the time. But it is important to say that he was never considered a suspect. Like, never. Like, he was questioned by the police, but it wasn't like an interrogation. It was more so like, hey, like, what do you remember that night? Do you remember hearing anything? Just to kind of try and help solve this case. But he was never, like, interrogated as an actual suspect of the death of his sister. So,
and they did find a man's DNA on her.
Yes.
But it doesn't match anyone in her family. It doesn't match the dad. It doesn't match the brother.
Yeah, they found blood on her underwear and I believe on her pajamas.
Yes.
And yeah, they matched it. So it wasn't until the DNA report came out that the Ramsey family was finally cleared, like officially on the media, that it wasn't them, because that blood that they found, they did know that it belonged to a male. They were able to determine that. The thing with that is, okay, so at the time of the crime, or since her murder, there have been multiple people who have claimed to have killed her. And the police do take it seriously, and they do kind of look into it, because again, they never closed the case. Like, it's still an open case
to this day.
But so far, everyone who has come forth and quote unquote confessed to her murder
doesn't match the DNA.
Doesn't match. And there was this guy who came forth and said, you know, that
he killed her. He was a known pedophile, and he lived down the street from her.
Yes.
But his DNA doesn't match.
Yes.
They put the DNA to try to match somebody in the
like
police
system.
database, and they can't find it. They can't find a match.
So that's one thing. Oh, another thing that is like really crazy about this case is with that same blood is that later there was this DNA guy or what is he, a forensic guy or
He'd be forensic.
investigator, where he said that the blood didn't actually belong to the murderer, but that it came from the manufacturer. So he said this was his thing. So he said that when the underwear were being packaged, and this is kind of ridiculous, when they were being packaged in the manufacturer, in the warehouse, God knows where this pack of underwear came from, one of the workers got a cut or something. His blood transferred to the underwear. They were packaged, and then the Ramsey family purchased it, and she put it on that night.
But weren't the pajamas, her long johns also have the same blood?
Oh, well, that's the thing. That's the thing where people are like, man, there's so many weird things about this case, because this forensic guy who said that it came from the manufacturer, quote unquote, proved it, because he took into court a brand new package of underwear, opened it up and tested it for DNA and found some. It wasn't blood, but they found people's DNA, because it could have been anything. Skin cells. Whatever it was, they found DNA. So the judge ruled that the blood was not able to be used for evidence. So they completely disregarded. So now today they wouldn't even be able to use that blood anymore. Which is, and this is, again, we keep going back to the same thing. That's why it is such a weird case, because there were so many like little things. And it's important to note too, which is kind of weird, that same guy who got the evidence blood thrown out of the case also worked on the O.J. Simpson case, which is also another true crime story for another day.
There's also this man who studies writing, on how people write, and he was convinced, and I don't really see why, but he was convinced that Patsy possibly could have written the ransom note, but he based it on her exclamation marks, the way she I think there was maybe a few words that had correlation to where, from the ransom note to how she wrote with her own penmanship, that were similar. But other than that, he basically only linked the exclamation mark as like, oh, these are set. These are exactly the same. But I don't find that convincing enough.
And you know what? That's another thing that I think that honestly, I think that if time at all was spent trying to match her handwriting to that ransom note, was a total waste of time, because I can write a letter with I'm right-handed, but I can write it with my left hand. It's going to look all ugly, but it's not going to be able to look like how I write with my right hand. So I think that the writing is something that you can easily fake, so I think that honestly, I would think it's almost impossible to be able to determine if a person wrote it just by looking at it and comparing handwriting.
Well, the reason why they hired this guy, or this guy wanted to do it, is because he's the one who figured out who the I don't know if it was the Unabomber or somebody, the Unabomber, and that his note, they found out who it was by his writing. This guy was the one who figured it out. So they kind of semi-believed him when he was like, oh, well, Patsy's exclamation marks are just like this one. But I don't think you can judge by just an exclamation mark.
Yeah. And the thing is that if you are the kidnapper, I think that you're not gonna kidnap somebody on impulse. Actually, I take that back.
It would be planned.
Yes, it had to have been. If it was somebody on the street, then maybe. Then it could have been like, okay, well, this person just saw the opportunity.
But not a well-established family who has money.
And they're not going to go into their home unplanned, unprepared. So I think that the whoever the kidnapper was had to have planned it out and had to have been like, this is what I'm going to do. And I think that it's pretty safe to say that it was somebody who knows the family, somebody within the family. We don't know, because of the details on the ransom note, which was they wanted $118,000.
And that's
close to the
bonus that he got, that the father got that year.
Yes. So they knew that. And then they wanted the money in like a very specific way. Like they wanted a certain amount of $100 bills. They wanted a certain amount of $20 bills. And if
that's
you're
pretty common with the ransom, because usually you don't, like, if I'm going to ransom, if I'm going to write a ransom, I'm not going to be like, oh, give me straight 100 bills.
If I'm robbing you, I don't care how the money comes. I just want you to give me the amount that I'm asking you for.
Well, I think if they were trying to get away with it, they wouldn't ask for just pure $100 bills, because that's like, can you imagine somebody rolling in the bank with like just tons of $100 bills? Right. So they would want that money split up from 10s, 20s, 5s, 1s, 200s. So I think it was planned a little bit.
Big time. Another thing that was kind of like, okay, well, this is a little weird, was that the night of, or so she got murdered throughout the night, basically, is that the day that they found her body, the dad left town. And that was another thing that people were saying, like,
why would you leave town if your daughter just
died? Where are you going? What is so important that needs to be being taken care of right now?
Instead of your daughter.
Yes. So that was super weird. Another reason that led people to believe that it was the family. Another thing that people mentioned was that they didn't look like they were grieving. So I think every single individual
grieves in
their own way, but there is like a stereotype of what grieving looks like sad, crying, like obviously sad. Basically, they want to see obvious sadness in your face, and the Ramsey family was never seen like that. Not saying that they didn't grieve her, not saying that they weren't sad, or not saying anything at all, but the way it was portrayed in the media was like, well, when have you seen Mrs. Ramsey look,
I think with the media, it's like they're not grieving enough, that's suspicious, or they're grieving too much, that's suspicious. I think.
I agree. And it was, again, like, it's open to your own judgment, because everybody is going to look at it from a different perspective, and it's just unbelievable. So the brother, again, he was never a suspect to the police department, but a lot of people believe that it was him, and that the parents were trying to cover it up, and that the reason why they were going to cover it up was because they already lost one child and they didn't want to lose both of their children. So the only person that the parents would go this far into protecting is going to be their son. So that was another thing. And Burke Ramsey is the name of her brother. He's never been like in the public eye, even till this day. He's a very private person. He lives a very normal life, but in 2016 he did an interview with Dr. Phil where he talked about it, or talked about the case for the first time since it had happened, which had been 20 years. It was a 20-year anniversary of her death, and a lot of people were judging him based off of the way he looked, and how he was reacting to the questions that Dr. Phil was asking him. So one of the obvious questions that people wanted Dr. Phil to ask was straight up, like, did you kill your sister? And he answered no, but he answered with a smile, and he looked like what most people called weird, that he weirdly answers. He suspiciously answered no. He got nervous,
because he was smiling.
And Dr. Phil responded to people saying that, and he stated that it was due to anxiety. And I can see that, I can see that being true, because it's the first time he's ever come out to publicly talk about his sister's death. And he knows that people think that he did it. Like, he knows that,
That documentary came out, and they accused him.
Yeah, there's no way that he doesn't know people have this perception of him. So some people twirl with their hair, some people play with their hands, some people blink a lot, some people react to anxiety differently, and he was just smiling. So I can see that being true. Like, I can see him being really nervous and kind of like being, well, like, no, I didn't kill her. Like, he, in the interview, he did state who he thought killed her, because that was another question that Dr. Phil asked him. And he said that he just always thought it was a pedophile who broke into their home and killed his sister.
Yep.
Somebody who was obsessed with her.
Because she was in pageants.
There was a lot
of people who would see her.
And if you're familiar with pageants, you know that they dress up the girls, they put a lot of makeup on, they make them look a lot older than they truly are, because they're children. She was 6 years old, but there's pictures of her.
She was a baby,
There's pictures of her with tons of makeup on.
They're very like
flashy outfits.
Glamour shots.
Yes.
It's truly sad.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the worst thing is obviously that she died.
Mm-hmm.
She was murdered, but
it's sad that nobody
is paying for it.
That she never got justice.
Yes, justice was never served for her. And I don't know. We're just going to leave it up to you guys to decide if you want to, who you think did it. And there's a lot of speculation and a lot of,
even with the details that we talked about today, there's still more details.
There is so much more. There's no way we can cover it in this time
we're going to go today. But there's a lot, and you guys are more than welcome to leave your opinions in the comments below.
And if you have questions about a specific thing, because we do know a lot of details about it, just because there's so much information. There's, it's a public record, so you can go on there. But if you have specific questions about the case, you can leave them on the comments below, and we'll be sure to answer that for you. Mm-hmm. But moving on to another tragic
case.
This
one, I mean, technically there is one death in this, but
yes,
this is also very sad, and it's horrific to imagine what happened here. I couldn't imagine, and especially for so long. So
it took me a while to wrap my head around that, because it is just mind-blowing, honestly.
It is mind-blowing. So there was this family. This is in Austria. I can't pronounce the name of it. Of the, I believe it's called a village. They call them villages instead of towns. Amstetten?
Yeah. Amstetten. Amstetten.
Yeah.
It's in Austria. It was in Austria.
So there was this family of, I believe, 7 kids. Mm-hmm. 7 kids. The father was named Joseph Fritzl, and his wife, I don't remember her name. I think something
Rosemary.
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 Yeah, I think it's Rosemary.
It is Rosemary.
Rosemary. So they had these 7 kids, and Joseph was a very strict father. He was very authoritative. When the kids came home, they knew they could play, but as soon as their dad got home, he was an engineer. Mm-hmm. As soon as he got home from work, it was time to be quiet, and it was time, for dad to do whatever he needed to do, or wanted.
The kids were on their toes.
Yeah, at all times.
At all times when the father was present.
Yes. But there was one girl that he was specifically protective about, and he didn't let her play out with her friends. He didn't want her to date, and her name was Elizabeth Fritzl. Mm-hmm. She was the fourth out of 7 kids. He was very possessive about her. Like I said, he wouldn't let her out. He wouldn't let her talk on the phone, even with her friends.
He was extremely overprotective.
Mm-hmm. Just with her, though. It wasn't with any of the other.
With her, yes.
None of the other siblings. So she ran away, I believe, when she was 15 years old. Yes. And she ran away with a friend because she just didn't want to be home anymore.
Mm-hmm. She became a waitress, too, when she ran away.
She was brought back home. And then
3 weeks after she ran away, she was found by the police and she was brought back.
And then if we skip forward in time, this also, just to let you know, this all happened in August 1984. Elizabeth is missing. She's 18 years old, and her mother and father go to the police station and they file the report that she's missing. And then I believe a day or a couple days later, they get a note in her handwriting that she's ran away from home and to not look for her, and she's going to go join a cult. Mm-hmm. And so the police open an investigation and they look into the Fritzl family because they want to know what home life is like. And when they see that he's very authoritative and everybody, is on their toes, they didn't really think much of it other than a strict dad. Mm-hmm. And so they understood why she would run away. Mm-hmm. So they closed it.
And she was an adult at the time. Yeah. So it wasn't like, they saw that her dad was authoritative and ran away at 16 and then just closed the case. She was an adult.
She was an adult. And they also, because of the note and because it was in her handwriting, they didn't think that she would have been taken or if she was in danger. Mm-hmm. She said in the note that she was going off on her own. She was going to go, do whatever she wanted, or join a cult. But if we fast forward 24 years, there is a girl who arrives at a hospital, and she is in a condition that the doctors have not really ever seen. Mm-hmm. She has skin that is pale as can be.
Yes.
And she's pale, she's sickly, and they don't know what's wrong with her.
She's 24 years old, but she has the appearance of like a 50-year-old.
Well, she's younger. This young girl is sick, and the only person who brought her is her grandfather. But he doesn't say who the mother is, and he doesn't give the doctors the information that they need. They need to know, where she lives. Mm-hmm. They need to know
basic information
mm-hmm. because she's a minor, and because she's in this condition. They want to make sure that whoever she's living with, they're taking care of her.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Elizabeth. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. She doesn't have the appearance of a 40-year-old.
This girl is named Kristen. Mm-hmm. Kristen. I think it's.
And she is a minor. Yes. Sorry.
So Joseph Fritzl is her grandfather, and he is saying he doesn't want to give the doctors any information. So with what happens is that the doctors go to the police.
Yeah, protocol.
And so the police come and they say, look, we need to know or you're going to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And because this girl's going to lose her life unless we know her medical background, because they run her ID and fingerprints, and it doesn't match anybody mm-hmm. in Austria. Yeah. There's no record of this person whatsoever. So Joseph says, this is my daughter's child. This is Elizabeth's child who went missing, so many years ago, but that's closed because she ran off. Mm-hmm. So they say, okay, well, we need Elizabeth here. She needs to give us the information about this girl. So Joseph's like, I don't know where she's at. She just left her to me. What happens is that the hospital contacts the media, and the media puts out, Elizabeth, if you're out there, we need you to come to the hospital. Mm-hmm. They actually put it out so that people can see and so that they can save this girl's life. About 3 days later, Elizabeth shows up to the hospital, and she's also looking sickly, and she's also pale, and she looks like,
this is where the appearance,
this is where her appearance.
Yes.
She has the
gray hair,
but she has a face so young. Mm-hmm. She's aged, but her skin itself, it looks young. Yeah. Pale. So the doctors go to the police, and they say, something's wrong here. Mm-hmm. And then sure enough, they take them into custody. And with 5 hours of interrogating Elizabeth, she finally says that her father had her held captive in a secret room in the basement for 24 years. And that the girl that is sick and dying, Kristen, is a child of incest. Mm-hmm. That Joseph raped her, and that Kristen's the firstborn. Yeah. And that there's other kids. So, a little bit about Joseph. Mm-hmm. I don't think his father was in the picture, and his mother was very abusive towards him and very strict with him as well. He grew up basically the same way, parenting style, as his mother. When his wife, Marie, was pregnant, he assaulted her at one point and broke her foot. And on their 17th year of marriage, Joseph and Marie, he followed a woman and raped her, but was only sentenced to 18 months of jail. They let him out, and she stayed with him. She did not leave him. Yeah. I guess if he was that abusive, I could understand why. Yeah, and she probably was scared.
Married him when she was 17 and he was 21. Mm-hmm. So she was very young, and I don't want to justify her or, say anything, that it's obvious that he was very manipulative, very, very possessive, very strict, even with her. So yeah, he had this specific parenting style, but it was also with her. Yeah. And I know that she was probably scared of him. She was too scared to do anything. She was very submissive to him in every way. And that's important later on in this case.
So he was let out of jail 18 months later for raping a woman, which to me
is already
that blows my mind. Yeah, that blows my mind. How long is the rape sentence now?
I know.
So, anyways, that makes me mad. And the fact that she stayed with him. But yeah. So how he kept her captive was that he basically built.
He was an engineer.
He was an engineer. And
he's alive.
Yeah, he still is alive. He will forever be in jail, but he still is alive. Yes. He went to the to get a building permit to build on his premises.
Yes. And in the home that he lived.
With
his family.
With his other kids and wife. He used the excuse to get his permit is that he was going to build a bomb shelter because this was in the time of the Cold War. And so for people to want to build an atomic bomb shelter, nobody was really going to bat an eye.
And it wasn't out of the understandable norm. Yeah. He wanted to protect his kids.
So he started to build this room, or start to plan to build this room, 6 years before he took captive of Elizabeth. Yes. 6 years before. So this was planned. This isn't something that he just decided to just do. He completely planned this. In years prior. Yeah. And his plan, it was foolproof because he got away with it for a long time.
A ridiculous amount of time.
24 years.
24 years.
This room, the room that he built, it had a kitchen. It had a family room, basically a living room. It had, eventually he expanded it. It had, working electricity. And so when Elizabeth turned 18, to get her down there, he chloroformed her and put her down there. To get to this place, you would have to go downstairs, so the basement. But in the basement, the first room is like a normal basement,
Mm-hmm.
like where you would keep laundry and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then to the there was a way that you can go to the next room, and he used that as his workshop.
Yes.
I believe that's the excuse he made to
be
his
down
wife
there
and to
so
be down
long.
there.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's what he needed, the permit for, was for
Yes.
that area.
And I believe he had a tenant who lived.
He did. He lived above.
Yes. So he wasn't in the specific room that Elizabeth was in, but he was like this guy. It took him 6 years, right? Or not 6 years to build, but he like planned it for 6 years. So he thought of everything. So he had a person down there, so it even made it less suspicious that there was anything or
going
anyone going on there, because there was a tenant who basically lived next door to Elizabeth, basically is what happened. And the tenant did later come out and say that he would hear noises, but
He didn't think much of it.
Fritzl told him that it was some like not gas pipes, but
Water pipes?
water, like, yeah, that it was just like, it was just like when you hear noises in your house and it's like the vents or something, so that was his thing.
So from this workshop room, behind a shelf was a door 3 feet high and 2 feet wide. It was a very small door, and this was an electric door, and only he could get in because he knew the code. So you'd open this little door, and then from there was a somewhat kind of like a hallway to another door where that one was locked. And all of this is concrete because he was building it,
With
quote
the
unquote,
intention
for an atomic bomb shelter. But
Yes.
in reality, it was to make it soundproof.
so that nobody can hear Elizabeth.
That's right. And then from that door beyond was the apartment, so to say, where they had, she had her kitchen, living room, and everything like that. And so he chloroformed her and put her down there. And within, I believe, 10 years, she gave birth to 4 kids.
Yep.
Because he raped her often. He quit his job as an engineer to be a real estate agent, to start his own real estate business so that he could work from home, and he would use the excuse that he needed to go out of town to do some work. But when he would go out of town, that's when he would buy supplies, or he would get rid of their garbage and things like that. When Elizabeth was pregnant with the first child, Kristen, who was sick in the hospital, which led to Elizabeth getting out, she was pregnant, and Joseph wasn't going to help her deliver it. So he bought her a delivery book all about delivery, and gave her towels and scissors, and that's it. That's all she got to deliver the baby on her own. Can you imagine?
I can't.
Of knowing, I mean, I don't know how. I can probably try to deliver a baby, but I'm not going to know what I'm going to do besides a movie.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Grab the head and turn. That's all I know.
Yeah. And obviously it's very disturbing and very sick that he was raping his daughter and getting her pregnant multiple times, but it was the children who kept Elizabeth going and living insane. Yeah, because she was held captive for 24 years. No access to anything, no contact with anybody else other than her dad
and a little TV.
and a small TV. So in a way, like, these children saved her, as, like I said, as disturbing as it is, but thankfully she survived, and it gave her that strength that she needed during that time.
Yeah. She told investigators and the police that during that time when she was captive, she would try to keep the kids' schedule pretty normal, like try to do normal things, teach them, whatever she knew.
Yeah.
From before being held captive, and she would cry softly when he would rape her so that they couldn't hear.
And another thing is that this asshole had been raping her since she was 11 years old. So before she was held captive in her home with her siblings and, you know, living what looked like a normal life, she was being raped by her dad since she was 11. And he did go out and say that he was in love with her, and when he had her captive with the kids, he didn't see it as he was holding her captive. He saw it as his second home, his second family, and he loved it. So he still had his wife and his other
family
kids
upstairs.
and upstairs in his house. So he lived that life. But he said that when he would come home, or quote unquote home, to Elizabeth, it was like that. It was a home to him. Mm-hmm. It was, and it's so disturbing, truly.
In an interview, he denied the allegations that Elizabeth said that she was raped at the starting age at 11 is when he started to rape her. And he went on this interview and said, "I'm not a monster. I wouldn't rape a little girl." But he didn't deny, you know what I mean, raping her at 18.
Yeah.
And
holding her
the entire time, you know. So they estimated that she had to have been raped at least 3,000 times because of how often he went down there, you know.
Ugh.
And so from when she was held captive at 18, 10 years later, when she was 28, she birthed 4 kids, and then on the 5th pregnancy it was twins, a little boy and a little girl. But something went horribly wrong, and the little boy,
the 5th pregnancy, guys,
5th pregnancy. During this pregnancy, the little boy, I think she named him Michael, he started to basically stop breathing because respiratory failure, and Fritzl refused to take him to a doctor. And so Elizabeth held her both babies as Michael died in her arms, because she didn't, she couldn't do anything. She only had probably towels and scissors again.
Yeah.
And that's all she could do. So Fritzl removed the child and burned his body so that nobody could find it.
Yeah. And okay, so let's get into why he got away with it for so long. So the thing is that the first thing that most people think about is, how did the wife not know? Right? How did she not know? How is somebody going to be living basically in their basement for 24 years and not a single soul knows? So, and then also because he said, and this is the thing, so the wife said that he never, not once, let her go downstairs or go into this, this room that he built, not even to take him coffee or anything. But
if somebody told you, hey,
natural
if you're married to that person and they're like, hey, I don't want you going into this room,
the minute he leaves the house,
you go in that room.
That's the first thing I'm doing. I don't care if it's my mom telling me, my dad telling me, my husband telling me. If they're that
persistent, don't go in that room. Don't look in there. Don't listen in there.
Don't even look that way.
In there,
yes. So that was one thing.
There was also either it was the family dog or the tenant's dog who would go
and bark.
His ears would perk up at certain things.
Yeah.
And he would go down to the basement.
The dog knew.
He would scratch at that wall.
Yes.
He knew. 100% he knew.
Listen to your pets, because they know.
And
poor dog, people
think even
the dog was a victim here too, because it's like, dude, he knew something was going in there. He would scratch that freaking wall and nobody went and listened to him. Poor dog. Seriously.
So because of the noise, when Elizabeth had that baby, the twin that survived, he took that baby at I think it was only 3-4 months old. He took the baby because he didn't want cries going on. So he took the baby and left the baby at the porch of the top of the house, outside, not just in the basement, where his wife would find the baby. And he had Elizabeth write a note, I can't take this, this is my baby, I can't take care of her. So sure enough, they took a minute, and then it happened, I believe,
which is also really weird. Which is also really freaking weird because yes, I know that the mom was probably like, okay, well, this is my because remember that that Fritzl had made Elizabeth write a note saying that she was going to join a cult and take off. So when this baby was abandoned at their doorstep, the mom probably just thought like, okay, she couldn't take care of the baby. She's still in that cult or whatever. But are you just going to willingly take, like, you're going to willingly take the baby because the baby is your grandson.
I guess. I can understand
asked, like never,
like
it was
looking
never,
for her?
It was never reported to the police like, hey, like, my daughter, like I want a wellness check on my daughter. Like, how can I find her?
Well, what happened is that another baby was born and they did the same thing. He had Elizabeth write a note, and they left that baby upstairs and they adopted those kids. They went through the system and adopted them. But
I did not know that.
Because they adopted them, social service would come and would constantly go and check on them. And they didn't find anything abnormal because his plan was foolproof. It truly was. Yeah. He took the babies when they were, only so many months old because that way they couldn't remember. They couldn't talk. They couldn't, speak.
They didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, they had no idea what was going on. They're just a baby.
Yeah.
So she had, I believe, one more kid because that was it, just the two. He would often brag to the kids that lived in the basement, the 4 that lived in the basement, that your siblings upstairs are living a great life.
Can you just imagine how she, like, honestly, it's just amazing to me that after even a year, she was still like hopeful. And I know that we said that it was mainly due to like her having kids and stuff, but I think there would have come a point where I would have just been like, just kill me. Like how she didn't
do it before her kids.
Yes, like how she didn't like,
because it took a couple of years for her until she had the first one.
And it's truly amazing, and it's really good that she found a way to keep herself sane in there, but I don't have words for this because he is just
a monster.
Yeah.
When Elizabeth came out and said, when she was after dealing with Kristen and the police and came out and gave her explanation, they took the kids and they said that one of the police officers said that when they took the kids from the basement, their eyes and face were glued to the car, like the car ride, like in tears, crying at what they're just seeing, like trees, the sky,
the world,
because all they could see was
their 4 walls,
was their their confined space, and all they could see was just what they saw on television. I find it interesting. I guess, I mean, he did say that he loved that family, and he did, I guess, in a way show that he loved them because he brought them snow. He would bring them things that they wanted to see. He, as far as going, getting snow and taking it down there so that they can play with it. In a way, I guess he did care, in his own sick way. Yeah. I think it's, of course, that it's sick of what he did, and that he got away with it for so long.
But he wasn't like abusing them all and
it was just Elizabeth
beating them, and so I guess that is a good thing.
Yeah. To this day, you can't find Elizabeth and her kids because the Austria government gave them new names, they removed them from the
witness protection, and
in their, like, I guess in a way, witness protection. They moved them from that village, and they
have new identities and everything, which is truly the best thing that they could have done for them.
I guess I wouldn't want them to be found.
I wouldn't want them to be found.
They would feel
whatsoever.
They'd feel embarrassed,
and not only embarrassed, but obviously, I'm pretty sure that her and the kids have or received a lot of psychological help, and they had like a lot of like therapy
hopefully
sessions and stuff. Yeah. But can you imagine? I don't think people would be respectful. Like, I think that media and everybody would be bombarding them every time they came out, like, hey, how did you do it? How did you survive? How did you, you know? And it would just be a constant reminder every single day. Every single day. And if they have now healed that part of them, you know, obviously they haven't forgotten, or especially not Elizabeth, but if she's like kind of like has coped with it and you know, like tried to move on as best as she could, every single day when people would see her, they'd be asking her questions. She couldn't hold
or she would be
job.
Looked differently. Same with the kids, you know,
and she would know it.
Yeah.
And she would know it, because you know when people are judging you or looking at you a certain way, or mumbling things behind her. So I'm really happy that they did that, and I really hope that they're never found.
Yeah.
And I truly just hope and pray that she reached a certain level of happiness.
No,
you know, after everything that she went through. So
the one thing I couldn't get a hold of, or I didn't see, was their health when they came out, because they were born without sunlight.
Yes.
And they were never really exposed, you know, as soon as they went out, they weren't exposed to even germs, you know, just from what Fritzl would bring in. So I was really curious about how their health was, and going out into the sun, what it would happen. I mean, they did say that their skin was very pale.
Yeah, they probably had. What's that when your skin gets yellow?
Jaundice. Yeah,
maybe he brought them vitamins too.
That is
because
a possibility.
He was really sick, but super smart.
Yeah.
This dude was brilliant.
He would go drive out of town to shop and to throw their garbage away.
And so the fact that he bought her a birthing book is just like, okay, you know, she's going to know what to do from here.
Yeah.
You know, so like, I'm pretty sure that he himself read books on how to, like, how long can a human go without sunlight? How long, you know, little things like that. I'm pretty sure that he educated himself on that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But going back to the wife, did she know? Did she not know? Because she claimed that she didn't know. I honestly cannot see how she did not know. I don't want to say that I 100% I'm sure that she knew that Elizabeth was there, but I know that
she knew that something was going on.
She knew that something was going on in there. And Elizabeth had 6 other siblings. How did they not get curious? How did they not? And I will say, though, in their defense, that fear is
driving motive.
Yes. So I know that his wife was probably terrified of him, as were the kids. I'm pretty sure of that. But
I think that
it's our human nature to be curious.
Yeah.
You know?
I think if she saw her, she had to have known that something was going on down there. But I don't think she knew that Elizabeth was in there, because...
Yeah, I don't think that she knew Elizabeth was in there.
Yeah, I don't think she knew that. And the reason is because if she knew how abusive he was, because he was abusive to her. So if she saw what was happening to Elizabeth, I think she would have done something.
You know what? I'm not 100% sure that she didn't know Elizabeth was in there. I will say that. Because he could have manipulated her into thinking that it was okay what he was doing. I'm pretty sure that if she did know, he found a way to justify his actions. He could have said, like, she was rebellious, she was doing this is better for her, let's just keep her down there, whatever. Yeah. Somehow made it seem like it was okay. Right. Yeah. So I can see that happening. I can see her being extremely scared to even go anywhere near trespassing his authority, because he said he didn't want her in there.
Yeah.
And it's just truly, it's just she's the only one that knows. Yep. If she knows, and if she did, it's just something that she has to live with. I don't even know if she's still alive. Probably.
She was when...
Because she was younger than Fritzl. I'm not saying that she couldn't have died sooner, but...
well, she was... How old was she?
It's very possible that she is still alive if...
Well, she was found in 2008, and she was in her 40s then, so... Yeah,
it's possible that she's still alive.
He's still alive.
He sure is. Hope he rots that hellhole. That's all we have for these cases. If you have any other questions about any of the cases, let us know down below. We'll go ahead and answer those for you guys. And there's a lot of information on both of these cases. I mean, it's very unfortunate that nobody is paying for the murder of John Benet. But I am glad that Fritzl got what he deserved, and I truly hope that Elizabeth and her kids did reach happiness, like I said. And that's all there is. You know, you can look up pictures of the living conditions that she was in. The basement. They will show that. I think there's like one picture of Elizabeth when she like went into the hospital, and you can see for yourself how, you know, her health was like her appearance was affected. But you're not going to find, like we said, they had new identities, so you're not going to find her. And
don't go looking for her.
Just let her life.
Yes. And let her be happy.
Yes.
She deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
But let us know how you feel about
do you think that the wife knew?
Do you think that Fritzl got an easy sentence? You know what I mean? I mean, it's just life for him.
I do like that he wasn't given the death penalty, even though he doesn't deserve to. I don't know, but I'm just going based off of like what if the death. Yeah, what if it is? Because being in prison,
he deserves to be in prison.
Yes, and he held her captive, and he's not being held captive because he's in prison, but like, you know, he's restrained to like leaving. He's incarcerated, so I think that at least gives him a little taste of his own medicine, you know, and he deserves it. Sure. So I think that if he would have gotten the death penalty, he would have gotten the easy way out.
I think they should have just put him in the basement, right?
Yeah.
Just put him in there.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
But like made it smaller.
Yeah, and here, let me bring you some snow. So hopefully this makes you feel better.
All right. So
it's a wrap, guys.
Tune in next time.
Till next time.
Later.